So, all right. We are in planning session with consultant to conduct superintendent search. This is the special Board of Education meeting and open session workshop. We are really happy to welcome BWP to our board meeting today. We have Kevin Kastner, right? Kastner? Am I, yeah. Yeah, okay. And Deborah Hill, thank you both for being here today. We are really happy and look forward to working with you on the superintendent search. So we'll get started right off with your presentation.
We're going to let Deb lead off, but first off, we're very excited. I'm excited to be back here with you. We're looking forward to this.
And everyone has said to me, "You've got Madison, what a great search."
That's great, yeah. That's good.
Just a couple of preliminary things to share with you. The purpose in our assisting you, and pretty much the purpose of BWP and Associates, is to help you make the perfect marriage. To find a superintendent who will be able to lead your school district, your system, to the best interest of your children. So we're all in this together in that ultimately, with all of the conversation and discussion, it's about getting a good person in order to make a difference in the lives of students. So we just wanted to say that, and that's kind of what we're dedicated to. So we thought we would review the PowerPoint presentation because one of the other purposes is to provide an opportunity and pretty much an outline for the community, which includes staff and students and parents and business members and everyone else who live in your community, with some information and some background to set the stage for this transparent process that we help you go through in order to select that person. So while you will have heard some of this information have heard some of this information with regards to our presentation relative to BWP, we did think it was important to share with the community this information. So, and if at any point in time you have a question, feel free to stop us and ask us.
Great. Deborah, have you been introduced to all the board members? I know Kevin was here last time, but maybe we should go around and just do brief
introductions. Okay, that's
fine.
I kind of met everybody individually.
Okay, Savion, you want to get us started?
I'm Savion.
Castro. Not to be confused with the Castro brothers.
Yeah.
I'm Nanda Murilli.
Chris Carusi.
Gloria Reyes.
I'm Kate Tapes.
Molly Muldrow.
Okay, and I'm gonna,
And then
one
we're
of the
missing
things.
one board member, Nikki, who will be arriving here shortly.
Okay, and when we have an opportunity to, as a part of our community engagement segment, we'll be talking with you individually and we'll get some more information about your affiliation and association with the district. So we'll save that for that point in time.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you.
So, of course, the first slide again shows how we are committed to help you continue to live up to your mission and your vision for the students in your community, finding that perfect leader. Your search team is Dr. Kevin Kastner, and I'm going to ask Kevin to take just a minute to share a little bit about his background, and then I'll share a little bit about mine.
I've been in public education probably almost 48 years. So it's been part of my life. I spent 25 years in Maryland doing all the things from big districts in Prince George's, which is 100 and some thousand, to Frederick, and been a chemistry teacher, basketball coach, everything in central office up to a deputy superintendent. Then I became superintendent in Albemarle County, which is in Charlottesville, Virginia, where I served 12 years. I've been an interim superintendent in 2 places. I teach at a university, and in addition to working with BWP and being involved in almost 30 superintendent searches, I also involved with a company called Cambridge Strategic Services that has done strategic planning in over 1,000 school systems across the country. So we're still connected with the schools, with the families. I have a wife who's a director of elementary school, and I also have an 11-year-old son and I also have a daughter that's in her 4th year at UVA. So the whole idea of when we work with the community of not necessarily being out of the field, but just continue to be engaged, always helps us as we're listening to people when we're going to be working with your community. I am very much looking forward to be here. I did spend some time in Wisconsin. I am a graduate of Marquette, and I've been in your campus a few times during my younger years, too.
Again, I'm Dr. Deborah Hill. I'm a native Chicagoan, born and bred, and never really lived anywhere else. Went to Northwestern University for both my undergraduate and my master's, and then Loyola University for my doctorate. Having been a native Chicagoan, born and bred, I've lived in Evanston since I went to Northwestern. I just sort of never left. And so I've been in that community for, we discovered it's been about 50 years, and it just seems like where did the time go relative to that piece. As a part of that community, I started off my student teaching in Oak Park, which is another suburb a little bit away, and I was the first African American teacher there that was full-time. And so that was exciting because one of the assignments they gave me after I had been there for about 4 years was to go out and recruit minority teachers. And so again, I have a real feel for and a real passion for how over time we have continued to try to encourage minority teachers to participate and come into the field of teaching. So, and that when you start talking about issues of equity, it's always a bell ringer in terms of where people are and what they're looking for. After leaving Oak Park and having my daughter, discovering that there was just no direct route between Evanston and Oak Park with the newborn, I went and worked at Northwestern supervising student teachers and MAT interns for several years, and then discovered I miss kids, and I still miss kids. And so every chance I get, I'm in a classroom, I'm proctoring tests and doing all kinds of other things. So then I went to Evanston, where I went back to being a classroom teacher. I've taught everything from kindergarten to 7th grade, taught in open space classrooms, taught in mobile units, team taught a lot of different things, but ended up spending 24 years as an administrator, teacher in Evanston. After teacher, I became a curriculum coordinator, director of curriculum and instruction, assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, acting superintendent, interim superintendent, and then after 24 years, I went to Glenview Northbrook, which is a little smaller district, and served there as superintendent for 7 years. One of the highlights of my professional career is I served on the ASCD Board of Directors for over about a 12-year period of time, from chairing a number of their committees to serving as a board member to being elected as president-elect and president and past president. And if you don't know anything about ASCD, it is the largest professional educational organization outside of the teachers union in the country. We have about 120,000 members in 119 countries. And it allowed me to have a different perspective on American public education because as a part of that leadership team, we did a lot of international travel. So I've had an opportunity to visit about 17 countries and to actually interview and work with and talk with teachers and look at their educational programs and curriculum and compare that to what we're doing in America. And that's another whole conversation, but we don't have it right yet.
What does the acronym stands for?
Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development.
Thank you.
Okay. So again, having done that traveling, it really gave me a different lens and a different perspective about leadership, schools, curriculum, assessment, instruction, all of those pieces. And I bring that to the table when we're looking to interview candidates for that major portion of our educational system, which is the superintendency. In addition to that, I've been an adjunct professor and then a core professor at National Louis University and then at Argosy University. And I retired. That was like my second retirement. My kids said I only retired to take the parties. I don't really mean that I'm not going to work anymore. But through all of that, I've been a part of BWP and Associates for about 18 years, the last 5 of which have served as the managing partner for the firm. So it's my responsibility to help put together the teams to go out and provide proposals and support them if they get the search process. And I probably do maybe 2-3 searches a year. I've probably done about 30 over time, but I usually only do 2 or 3 searches because I'm busy putting together people to go do other searches. And I typically only take searches in school districts where if I were going to come out of retirement, it would be a place I'd like to work.
Aw, thank
Very
you so
cool.
much.
So that's
I have to.
Yeah, we made the right choice.
So I think you're right on that.
so that means I'm really passionate about making sure that we get it right. And so consequently, again, taking that, and as Kevin talked about, the fact that one of the things that we bring to the table is the people that we know, because we headhunt as well as solicit applications. We don't just wait for people to apply. We go out and touch the shoulder of people who may not know that they're looking for this job. And we can only do that when we learn and know about you and know about your community, and we match that with what we know about others and the experiences that they bring to the table. So I think that that's a really important connection with regards to what we do and our passion about this work. Our record of success, as Kevin says, we've done many searches. I've done large searches, small searches. In the district, in the company, I'm usually the one who doesn't mind traveling, although Kevin doesn't mind traveling either. So I've done searches in Maine and Ohio and St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm the one who won't mind getting on a bus, which I did today, or tried to, and a train, or flying, to go again, because it's very interesting to me to see how many of our communities are alike and yet unique and different from one another.
I'd like to make a point on that, more for the audience. Only 2% of the school districts in this country have more than 20,000 students. So when you're talking about a larger system as yours, not everybody can do a larger system. The fact that you're a university community, and the fact that we have worked in university communities, I can tell you, University of Virginia, there's some similarities. We certainly know what Deb has done in Evanston. So there's a different understanding of just the expectations and sometimes even the diversity within the community that's going to have so many different types of stakeholders. So when we tried to talk about the record of our success, we're talking about comparable type systems. Our recent work in Rochester, Columbus, even Sumter, South Carolina, we have really been out across the country and have a good understanding of who's out there, and we think that's going to serve us well. The fact that BWP is exceptionally strong in the Midwest, because a lot of the directors are here, is going to, I think, support the robustness that we're going to have in meeting with people. You want to do the overview there?
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about, in terms of our success rate, we've done several studies. We did one particularly in the Illinois area, and we have really documentation that indicates that we're at about a 94% success rate of superintendents who get hired and who stay, who get their second contracts. We think that that's really a good marker for us in terms of, again, trying to engage the community, engage the board, and actually make that match. And so we continue to gather that data to support that particular information relative to our success rate across the country. Okay, so what do we want to help you do? Every district and every community is unique. There are things that are similar, but there are a lot of unique components. So we help design, I call us the little boutique firm, because we help design and craft the search that's going to be appropriate for your community. We have templates and guidelines available in order so that you're not reinventing the wheel, but at the same time, we really want it to tailor what your needs are. And so part of tonight's session we'll be looking and doing some initial planning in order for that to happen. The second piece that I want to add to that in terms of the process is we are firm believers in transparency, and we are firm believers in engaging the community appropriately for this search. I'm known for being very basic and very upfront with the community and saying that the employment of the school superintendent is the job of the Board of Education. So when you start off that conversation, then you have to define and help the community define what their role is. They definitely play a part, and they definitely have a role. But their role, their job is not to hire the school superintendent. Their job is to elect board members and let them do their work. And that's a mantra you'll hear me constantly say. So because when we recruit highly qualified candidates who match the profile, then their expectation is that they're going to be working for the Board of Education in concert with the community. So it's really important for the community to understand that you've been given that task, but you need their assistance and cooperation in order to make that marriage a success. And so that's an important component. We're going to complete the search within the board's expectations, recognizing that we have what I call a flex schedule, which is what we're going to be designing. It's not in hard concrete, so if you think of it as like slightly thickened Jell-O, what happens is we try to set the dates, but we also have contingency plans. And as we're walking through it, from my standpoint, that's one of the hardest things to do is to get the calendar set, because if you work backwards from when you want to announce your selection to your first interviews, your second interviews, the deadline date, when you put all of those dates together, if we have a major snowstorm and something happens, then you've got to be a little bit flexible in terms of doing that. The key, however, is to always let the community know where you are and what you're doing. And so we try not to prepare any documents or present anything other than the personnel information of those initial candidates that that the community can't have. And so we had a very wonderful pre-meeting to talk about the communications. And again, it's letting your community know every step of the way what's happening, what's going on. Having said that, you'll be getting periodic updates that says, this is where we are. We're right on target with the calendar. We may have to adjust something because of X, Y, and Z. But again, it's that notion of communicating with one and all so that people have the information they need to have and a rationale for why we're doing the things we're doing. And I've found that communities are very responsive if they know the why. They may not necessarily agree with it, but if they know the why, they're much less likely to come and be concerned and be upset in terms of that particular piece. So completing the search within your expectations, and again, recognizing that you are the decision makers. And so we will help you every step of the way, talk about consensus building when you get to looking at the candidates, talking about a 7-0 vote. Again, that's critical because you don't want your new superintendent to come in and the first part of their job is to convince the people that didn't vote for them that they're really the right choice, or convince community people that didn't particularly care for them that they're the right choice. We want them to come in, hit the ground running, working with staff, working with administrators to make sure our kids are safe and learning. And we want to be able to set all the rest of that other stuff aside, which will happen if the superintendent has your full support from the beginning.
I want to now explain the whole idea of the search process. On BWP's website, this folder is available that talks about specifications, it talks about recruitment, it talks about how we assess candidates and how we then will recommend people that meet the profile to the board for their consideration. When we do that, we will do it alphabetically. We will not do it by saying this is top or not. We'll say who meets the profile. Tonight, to get this right, the very first stage of the process, called specifications, is outreach to your community and us getting to know the board, us getting to know the community, and seeing if we can report back information on what we've heard to the board in a community engagement report. The specification lays the groundwork for the board adopting a profile. And when they develop a profile, it will be unique to this school system. It will be talking about the type of candidate you're looking for. In the specification stage, we will be spending 2 full days, 10, 12-hour days, and go through 30 to 35 meetings every 45 minutes from dawn to dusk. We also will be having community forums where if some stakeholder group would be involved during the day, anyone in the community can attend those meetings. Board members can sit in on any of those meetings if they choose. We will probably end up meeting 150 or more people. We will, in a qualitative way, ask them some basic questions. What are the strengths of your school system? What are the challenges? What are the qualities and characteristics you'd like to see in a new superintendent? And anything else they might want to share. We do not embellish, and we do not attribute anything to any individual. Just as we will interview each of the board members, we're not going to say this board member said this and that board member said that, but we'll develop a pattern. At the same time, we're going to develop a quantitative survey in which you will sign off on, in which any member of your community, and we hope even your students, will contribute to that survey during the window that we establish. And it too is going to ask similar type questions. I expect you will get 500 to 1,500 responses. Wouldn't be surprised. We've had up to 3,000. So that quantitative information is going to set some patterns also, so that we will tell you what it seems are the themes. Why do we want to know the strengths? We want to share the strengths to the candidates. We want to tell them what the community is saying. Why do we want to know the challenges? We want to, up front, let people know that they have, well, if anything, they've had experiences in meeting challenges in their leadership role, and not say what they could do, but actually be able to tell us what they have done, so that when they meet with the board, they can have a credibility whether they've addressed the achievement gap, whether they've addressed the hiring and retaining of diverse staff, whether they've talked about their success with special needs children. All these types of things you're going to want to know because you're representing your community. So during this time, we also are going to be posting an announcement. And we're going to, before that announcement gets posted, it is going to have to be vetted by the board members, so anything we put out, you're going to sign off. The same thing, all board members are going to need to work with staff to make sure we interview the people you want us to interview, and we create that access. So the specification part lays the groundwork. But before we get into the specification part, we're going to need to do this is the work. We've got to get the calendar nailed down. Because you got to tell people when the deadline's going to be. You got to tell them when you might be expecting somebody, and you've got to talk about where these windows are going to be. You're also going to have to guide us on what information you're going to tell us about salary parameters. You're also going to need to tell us about how confidentiality works in your protocols, but also within the state protocols. We're going to get to this at the end of this PowerPoint. Specifically, you have some documents that we're going to walk you through. So after we do the specification stage,
I want to add one more thing about specification, because you've talked pretty much about the public engagement. We will be interviewing each of the board members on a one-on-one, and again, we'll talk about that as we design and develop the calendar, and we'll probably do it via telecommunication or by phone.
recruitment. because you've signed the letter of understanding at your meeting earlier this week, we will put this job out on our website tomorrow morning. And that really will begin the recruitment. We will not have the details. We'll say details will be coming, but BWP is doing this search, and we're at the process right now of putting up on our website the opportunity for people to start submitting their applications. All the details will follow when we get the profile, and we will do, and one of the things we'll need to decide, do you want to do a 30-day advertisement in some of the publications? Do you want to do 60 days? Do you want to do online, or do you want to do paper copy, which costs more money? Later this evening, we're going to talk to you about some of those details. You also have to understand that there's over 50 associates that work with BWP all across the country. When we have a search going on, particularly one as prominent as this one, they also will be talking to people they know. And there's a lot of other connections we have. We have a connection into the Harvard's Urban Superintendent's Academy. We have the ASCD connection. We have some other organizations that we've been in part of. So all these type of things, we have been very successful. And I think if you talk to our references, if anything, we'd hope they might say we made their job hard. Because the references were people that they were happy when it got to the point of having them be in the community, that their community also said, you've got a good pool of candidates. That's what you want.
We also asked if there are people out there that you know that you would like for us to take a look at, to actually have a conversation with and to invite, not only you, but any members of the community. So we don't cut it off in terms of people who just apply for the position. As I said, we go out and tap people on the shoulder who may not realize they're looking for this job right now.
One thing that's hard for us is internal candidates, because we want to not jeopardize the confidentiality. But if you have internal candidates, we certainly want to encourage them, but we'll have to rely on sometimes some board direction. You also have had some former excellent employees that are now superintendents. That's pretty good training. And if there are those people out there, if they want to be considered, we would probably need your help. And that all is part of the process. When you get into the assessment, I think the bottom line of assessment is you want us to do the homework so you do not get any surprises. Because the minute you announce even your finalist candidates, anyone in this community is going to be out there, and they're going to find out in their communities everything that there is to know. And you don't want to have something to come out and be a surprise. So the idea that we will have to vet candidates, we will have to go way beyond just someone writing a nice reference. We have to be good at that. And fortunately, I think our track record is such that we are. You're counting on us. Even though we're going to have formal background checks, and we'll do certain things, surprises happen. There's a great candidate in Maryland in one of the best systems. Got all the way through, they did a background check, and it found out that that person had filed for bankruptcy. No one knew. So you can't cut corners in the due diligence that is necessary. If you have a governor, you want the same type of scrutiny that you're going to have for a governor as you're going to have for a school superintendent. Because that's just what you got to count on us for. And so when we get into the assessment and all that, before we bring anyone to you, you're going to want us to explain how deep we go. Now, it's getting a little tougher now with social media. And we're talking about responsible social media. There are things out there at times that just are not true. But we need to find out what they are so that we can hear both sides of the story. We have seen some things that would give a board a pause, but we find out they weren't true. So we're going to be working on that.
So let me walk you through what actually happens. Online, not through your HR department, but strictly through BWP, we use Frontline, and there will be a link on your website that will take them to the BWP Frontline, as well as there'll be a link on our site, and then that information in any of the professional organizations. So people who are applying, apply directly to us. There's a fairly sophisticated application process. There's an application, they have to have letters of reference, they have to have copies of their certification, they have to have transcripts. So once they've submitted all of that, they're not considered an applicant until we have all of that data. So we have some people that start and then look at it and say, not for me. We go back and investigate to see if we need to encourage them to complete it, or if they did the right thing by not doing it. So once, and again, that'll be a part of our calendar, the deadline for the application. So that's the decision that you're going to have to make tonight. The second thing that happens is once that deadline occurs, each of us individually screens all of those applications based on that profile that we created. And then we come up with our own 10 to 12 considerations, and then we meet and talk and narrow that down to 10 to 12 that we've agreed upon. And then we interview those people. We find out sometimes a lot more comes out of the interview than looking at the paper documents. And then out of that, once we've completed the interviews, then we bring to you a slate of 5 to 6 candidates that we think best meets the profile out of all of the applicants. And then by then, we've already set the calendar of when you're going to have your first round interviews and when you're going to have your second round interviews and what the community engagement will look like around the second round candidates. I like to think of, you have applicants and then you have candidates, applicants, they've completed the paperwork, candidates, there's somebody we're considering, and then semifinalists, and then your finalist. And so taking a look at each of those.
When we present to you our recommended slate of candidates, we will share with the board 100% of the people that applied. We will, to protect confidentiality, we'll do this orally, but if anybody that we share that you want more information, or even if you want to consider interviewing them, that's your call. Rochester, they added a person, and it turned out that person then became a finalist. That's fine. So I just want you to know, this is where all board members get all the information equally so that you're on the same page in doing that. Because you're in a situation where the finalists are going to be public, we could give you some options that we've seen that have worked. And also, when you're getting involved with the interviews, we will give you structured interview questions for you to consider. Because there'll be a certain process that you want to go through, but again, each board member might choose a couple questions, but if you're going to do it in an hour and a half time, you also have to decide how that's going to work. So these 4 steps, which you already know, we're saying for the community, and that's the type of thing that will end up being on the website. I do want to close with another slide, and one of the things you'll see when we talk about the pros and cons, this very last slide that I have here. This very last slide talks about how important it is to work as a team. People are going to be interviewing you as a board every time they watch your meeting. We can't have board members going outside the box in confidentiality. We've had a board member call another board member about a candidate, and that candidate withdrew the next day because of confidentiality. We've had the press get involved with something on the side. We've had people withdraw. Your integrity and our integrity are important. It's to get the best possible candidates, them knowing that they are going to be out there in the public if they're a finalist. But we can encourage the strongest pool. But we actually, and I'm just telling you, in one of our searches, the board ended up rehiring us. We came in because the previous people in the search, confidentiality became a problem. It really wasn't the search firm. It was some board members. it's tempting. I know somebody that knows somebody. We're just telling you, you don't want that to come in and make that an issue, okay? The whole other issue is, as Deb's already said, we don't recommend anyone coming in on a 4-3 vote. We hope it wouldn't be a 5-2 vote. We've seen 6-1s and it can work, but the idea of someone coming in, bringing their family, their children to go to your schools, they gotta be pretty serious about it. And you know that. And again, you've been in this community a long time. The whole key is for this community, when you hire somebody, to say after the first few months, boy, we got this right. And you've done your job as a board. And that's our goal, to help assist you with that.
One final piece, we do not have a stable of superintendents out there to pick from. Some other firms may have a bank of people they have on the side. Our role and job is not to solicit and hire and work for the superintendents. We work for you. And so every search for us starts from scratch. We have people who've applied 4 or 5 different times for various positions for the search. So know that we're going out there fresh, looking for the person that's going to best suit you.
Well,
Questions?
So you find a really high-quality candidate, and you think this candidate would be great.
Ollie, do you
Ally,
have your mic on?
your mic.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Barb. You think this candidate would be an exceptional candidate for this district and possibly another district that you're working with. How do you decide which district you would want?
We don't double dip.
Okay.
We let the candidate make that decision. But, you know, we don't select candidates and put them in more than one search.
But could a candidate say, I'm interested
Yes,
in
and
applying to both?
Yes, and that's on them, but it's not something that we do. The other thing is that we don't beg, borrow, and steal. We don't have a candidate that we placed, and then 2 years later decide, well, we think you ought to go over here. So we usually have about a 3-year maximum before we will replace a candidate. The other piece, and I don't know if Kevin talked about this, is we believe that we will bring you a core of good candidates. If, however, the marriage doesn't work, we will come back and do the search. And I think we have a 1-year window or 2-year window? 1-year window. If it doesn't work, we'll come back and do the search at cost. It means no cost for the consultants, just the cost for the support staff people. The other piece that Kevin did not say is that we offer, as a part of our package, mentoring the board and the new superintendent for that first year, from the standpoint of being available for phone communications. We don't necessarily come back on site unless there's a different fee related to that. But there's no fee related to calling us. For example, I got a call from one of my districts, and they wanted for me to send them samples of superintendent evaluations because they're in the process. So I'm putting together a package. That's not costing them anything. It's a part of them being a part of that first year. Because again, we want this to be a successful relationship and a successful marriage, and sometimes we can give feedback and input in various aspects of how to make that work. So those are 2 other pieces that you didn't say. That's why you have me here.
Remember, I work for her, so,
Chris, did you have
Questions?
something else? Chris, and then Ananda?
I'm just curious, at what point in this process do we review the contract that we had for our past superintendent and talk about updates to that contract for the new superintendent?
the answer to that is once you are looking at a candidate, that's when you begin negotiations. And that's on the end when you get to narrow it down and you're actually talking to the person and how your legal department works there and under the parameters of what the board decides, that's when that comes into play.
And one of the things that we do is for those 3 semifinalists, to 2 or 3, we ask them for just a little cheat sheet of expectations so that it gives you a starting point for having contract negotiations in terms of that particular piece. And we share that with you once you have those 3. We say this is what they're interested in terms of contract if they're the person that you select. Okay.
We're going to come back to your question later this evening when we're going to talk about parameters of salary.
Ananda?
I don't take too much more of the time, but you mentioned earlier around our role and the role of the community. And Kevin, I know we talked a little bit when you came here first. We have a very active community that, you know, with a lot of rights, scrutinize, you know, all our decisions. So curious on if that has happened or has been your motto around engaging any community member on any final piece of the process. And I know I had already some folks outreaching and wanting to be part of a hiring committee. So, yeah, okay.
Deb,
Can
you want to?
Speak a little
This,
bit.
this is like, this gets me right here.
Okay.
What we do is, again, there are really two components of community engagement. The upfront part in which we get information and learn about the community, and they get an opportunity to really share and come to some agreement on that. The second part really comes down to when you have your 2 or 3 semifinalists. Kevin talked about a number of different ways that you can do that. The most successful one that I've had is called a day in the district. And in that day in the district, you bring the candidate, each individual candidate in to spend a day. They have an opportunity to meet with staff. You've already determined your focus groups, so they may be meeting with some of those focus groups. They will have a chance to visit schools. You will have a community forum for them. The critical piece in doing that is to convince the community that they should only participate with one. If you got 3 candidates, you don't want them participating with all 3. Because when they do that, then the expectation is that they're really going to get to vote, that they get to compare, and they get to tell you which one that they like. And then it defeats the purpose of having, one, the board vote, but also having everybody on board with that candidate. That's a mantra you have to start in the beginning that says, here's where the community input comes. This is what you're going to be doing. You will have an opportunity to meet our 3 finalists. It will be done through focus groups, doing visits, to having a community forum, which is controlled, where they'll be able to ask questions. That is usually facilitated by board members. And then you as a board get that information from each of those different 3 nights. That has been very successful in large districts for me. The boards have liked it because it gave community input, but it also took that pressure off of having them do a comparison and then thinking that they got a chance to vote.
2 other pieces to that. First, you as a board are going to know a lot more about background and reference checks of candidates that can't happen when you have a community forum. Second, community members that have relationships with board members still have the freedom to lobby any board member they want if all of a sudden they really like somebody. The point is, that's fine, that's part of the process. But they don't have a vote. They aren't the one that ran for the election. So the issue is to tell them how they can weigh in and what the parameters are in the best interest of you hiring your superintendent. So it's trying not to say no in a way that and tell them there's another way you can do this. They can come to board meetings. It isn't just the day that we come in for engagement. This energizes a community through a period of time when it helps school systems go from one level to the next, just because it's bringing everybody together on the same page. But you all want the same thing.
And when they, just let me finish that up and then we can have you. But one of the things that happens is, again, you're back to the same 4 questions that you created the profile with. So everyone is looking at those candidates based on that profile. That, okay, we've said these 7 things. How well does this candidate seem to meet these 7 things for you? Rather than the hidden agenda or the not so hidden agenda that a person might have in terms of addressing the candidate. And so again, setting those parameters at the very beginning, explaining why. I find that that's really critical. I've had community members come in and they weren't all that hot about that. And then as we explain the rationale, it's like, oh, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. And now I know where I can participate and what that's going to look like and why I shouldn't come to all 3. So we find that has worked well as a strategy.
Great, no, let's go with Savion and then Ali.
If a internal candidate rises to the finalist pool, is there a different process for like a day in the district or community forums?
No. We
No.
treat all the candidates the same. They're all equal. They may not go to their school, if they're coming from a school session, but we think it's important in terms of fairness and equity for everyone to go through the same process.
Ali?
So we'll have 3 board members who will appear on the ballot in April and possibly in February. And so transparency becomes a theme during elections. Also, the way that other candidates may want to interact or, have input on this process. And so how do you all kind of navigate that, given that the board, could see a significant transition based in that election?
When's the election?
April.
April 4th, April 7th, April 7th.
You're gonna,
With
in a pragmatic way, you're gonna be done before then. You're gonna be
Okay.
done before March.
Would you start running
Right.
before then too?
I understand that that's gonna cause some energy to occur and all that.
There's also a primary in February.
February primary.
If-
We'll have to learn more about that. We have seen situations where board members have been elected before it's completed, and do they sit in as a non-voting member before the transition? And we don't encourage that, but that's a local decision that you all need to work with us, because it's your decision, not ours.
Yeah,
But
I
the
mean, I
other
think
piece-
I think just the bottom line is, I think that the board members who are in that role, right, as board members, are the ones who will be making the decision. Despite what happens in a February election, or, and then April comes, election happens, depending on where we're at on the timeline, we hope to be done by then. Then we'll just bring up the new board members up to speed. But I don't see a role for potential candidates as part of this process.
Other than you may want to make the potential candidates a focus group
Yeah.
ahead of time, so that they can understand the questions and understand the process, because at least part of what I do when I'm doing the focus group is I upfront talk about the process. Here's how we're doing this. Here's where the information is. Here's what the timeline is. Here's why I'm asking you to only plan to interface with one candidate. So if you do that, and you do that enough, and I always then appoint those people who are part of those groups as ambassadors, because then more than just us knows the information, and they can then respond to questions out in the community. So if you have potential candidates, at some point, remember, we're going to be starting the focus groups within the next month. So it may be by the time you get on the back end of that, when you have your 3 candidates, that you create potential candidates as a focus group to be engaged in that process with your 3 finalists. Again, just so that they have some sense of how you proceeded and why you got where you are in terms of this, so that they're not coming in cold come April with the new superintendent who'll be starting in July.
Okay, at this point, we need to get to work.
Yep.
You've got 2 sheets in front of you. I am going to start with the key decisions with the board. We are also going to be looking at this other sheet, which is a draft calendar. So if you have those 2 sheets in front of you, we want to make sure that together we can help you give us direction.
Barb is just printing the key decision one. We don't have that one printed right now, but the timeline one is. so.
Okay, well, this will be simple, though. The very first question is when you want to do the community engagement. Now, the community engagement takes a lot of time to make sure we don't leave anybody out. Originally, we thought about if you were on a quick timeline, we had availability October 2nd and 3rd. We think that could work against you because we've talked with staff and they do not feel that they can be 100% sure that there wouldn't be some criticism that we were rushing. It's not worth it. Because in the end, you're going to find we'll be able to get your superintendent to, you'll be able to vote in the superintendent in February or early March. And whether they come that year or they come in July. We think you need to err to take more time. Our next window, and this does not have to be decided this minute, but within a day or two, is,
No, I disagree.
okay, is October 29 and 30. We have to involve, we can't do Halloween, and you don't want to do a Friday. So the nearest window that we're available is October 29 and 30, and we're talking 7 in the morning till whenever the night's done after your forums. Instead of coming in the day before and interviewing board members, we're going to do that the week before and interview each one of you on the phone. That way, it's more efficient. And it's important for us to interview board members before the forum because you'll help us understand things that we might be hearing.
So can you clarify, you mentioned October 2nd and 3rd is the first day?
We're
not
saying
gonna do that, yeah.
that would be probably rushing it too much.
That was initially one of the dates that was considered, but now that we've had conversation, we think that that's gonna put you in too tight of a time frame.
To communicate with our staff, that's.
Your staff people thought that they said, listen, we know our community. We want to make sure we have plenty of time. We don't want anyone suggesting that we haven't had the idea of having this information out there. I respect that.
Yeah. And then the October 29th and 30th is to meet with community leaders.
Yes, that would be the day of the focus groups. So if you think about it from this perspective, first, you're gonna have to generate a list of who you'd invite. Then you have, in order to do that, once you've done that, then you have to figure out where and invite them to come where, when.
Right.
Then you have to send out an invitation. And so the intent was that there's at least a 2-week, I mean, it's just, courtesy to give people at least 2 weeks' notice of these meetings.
Yeah.
That was why that first October date didn't work, because
Okay.
that means that you'd have to send out invitations on Friday.
Thank you for clarification.
So the intent is that we will have that big window, and that the actual dates of those focus groups would be on October 29th and October 30th. Focus groups are usually scheduled at an hour. The actual conversation is about 45 minutes, and then you give 15 minutes of transition time. And if we're traveling, we have to build that in as well. But both of us, and we will be able to bring in another consultant to be able to accommodate the groups that you identify in those 2 days, with the evenings being set aside for the open community forum.
So, okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask a question around, I know we had toyed with the idea of the 6th, 7th, 8th, and that Yom Kippur is on the 9th on this
It
calendar.
starts sundown on the
On the
8th and
8th.
goes through the 9th.
So
Yeah,
I just-
what happened is this had to do with our availability.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Um,
fine,
so
I just wanted to make
it-
sure.
We
had
could have
originally
maybe
pulled
moved it
that
up,
off.
but unfortunately, we have some other conflicts.
Okay.
So if it's possible that the board could settle on that, that
I
would
think-
be great.
Yeah, I think we're good on those dates.
So we're deciding October 29th and 30th. That's the first decision for the,
Community engagement.
Community engagement,
with the community.
right.
Can I ask one more question before we finalize that?
Mhm.
I mean, that's 6 weeks from now.
Mhm.
And I know you guys have had some pushback on our timeline, which is appropriate. Is the community engagement a gate for us to proceed with other recruitment activities?
You'll be
or
doing
can we
them-
do those in
You're doing
parallel?
them ongoing.
So it's not
Um,
it won't necessarily impact the
No.
kind of overall arc of the, okay.
And as a matter of fact, it may give you some additional advantage. One of the things we spoke with staff about, and I'm in the midst of it, I'm doing the search in my own community, and that is making sure that the information on how community members get to participate in the process gets out. We did a whole different set of things in addition to our regular communication strands
Okay.
in order to encourage people to either come to the community forum, if they've been invited to the focus groups, to participate in that, or minimally do the survey. And so having that extra window may allow you to do some extra things to try to get maximum and optimum participation.
Great, you did
So
your
the
follow-up?
29th and 30th,
Yeah.
but not the 31st. The
Correct.
So
Halloween, Halloween's kind of a
Uh,
deal
Kate,
here, so.
Yeah, there's here too.
Just-
Kate, I want to address your point. We are going to be out we are going to have the board sign off on announcements within the next week or so.
Okay,
And once we get those announcements posted, and we also will get into the national publications, so that's going to enable that to happen. We need the profile, which we won't use until we vet towards the end of the process. So some of that, we won't know for sure because we aren't going to get into those deeper discussions. So we can start the work moving, and it will not be a negative in the window. So we'll be able to still maximize the window.
great, thank you.
Ananda?
Clarify, the October 1st is the applications due to consultant. What is the application?
Okay, so we're gonna now, because we're doing the community engagements a little bit later, we'll probably adjust
Oh.
that date.
Okay.
And again, that's why I said you're looking at a flex calendar.
Okay.
So now we need to roll everything back a little bit, because from the candidate's perspective, you want to give them at least 30 days, and 45 is optimum, but at least 30 days from the time that you post the position to when the applications close.
So what you're looking on the draft calendar you have here is no longer is going to be changed.
Okay.
And I do think, in listening to staff, that we can do a better job with this extra time. Next question. As you know, we then have to decide on how long we want the window to open. And the question, when you're talking about that, when you're going to put out an application, is when you're going to close. And when you go now to look at the calendar, we think you're going to want to wait until, you could wait as late as November 30th. And since your community engagement isn't until the end of October, I say go for November 30th. And by doing November 30th, you can have your first interviews in December.
Can we do Monday the 2nd? Since
You-
December,
We can, you give us a date and we'll do it.
Just because it's Saturday would be like right in the middle of the
So-
holiday.
So what day are you talking about?
So Monday the 2nd, the first.
December 2nd.
For,
December 2nd, for whatever it is that you just said, the.
December 2nd, fine.
actually, that date doesn't really impact you in terms of, because you won't be doing anything. That's just the date when the application process will close. So you can do it earlier. It really doesn't have anything to do with your calendar.
Oh, okay.
From that perspective. It's just, this is when we're going to get the applications will cease then, so that we can start to review.
And
The
when-
next piece of that, however, is then when we're going to present the candidates. And so that's the date we have to work around, is if the applications stop on the 2nd, and I would even move it up earlier, but
What would you suggest?
I would suggest the 24th, which is the weekend before Thanksgiving.
I would,
Feel more comfortable with that too.
I
Just-
agree.
Yeah,
Done.
I'm just wondering, because I'm like looking at the highlighted dates in my head and I'm having a hard time in flexing the schedule in my head. I'm wondering if Rachel or somebody can help, like just writing it down, what is the new dates that we're talking about? Because I'm still not sure if I understand when is the application begins. Since-
Applications can begin tomorrow
Right.
when we start posting.
Right.
But how are you going to know the profile of the candidate? if
Okay.
we don't-
Let's separate two things.
Okay.
The application posting, we're going to start tomorrow. Because the LOU has been signed, we have the description, and we'll have it close, at least by the end of this week. People will start to apply then. When you finish the profile, we add to that. We add to that application. We add to that, to the advertisements. We add to that website because now people can look at specifically what skill sets and characteristics we're looking for. So that it's like an adding a separate piece, you know, when you say details to follow, that's the details to follow. But people will already start making their
So we're
application.
putting a save the date, basically.
Right, yes,
And then people can already,
right,
like, show interest.
exactly.
But there will be a further, more complex application that will be a.
It's the same complex application. What will be more information about the
You'll
district.
be request more information.
Right.
Ananda, one of the things that happens,
Sorry, I'm
while they
being-
might
maybe
make
this
an
is not-
initial application,
No, that's good, that's fine.
Is it okay?
Yep.
while they might make an initial application, once they get more information about the district and the profile and everything, they're gonna amend their application to match when they apply. But because it's an attractive place, they're gonna know, and then they're gonna go do your homework. Now, the idea of the 24th of November gives us more flexibility too, to do a better job, so that you have more flexibility in December when you want that first interview. I see no downside if you choose to make the cut date November 24th. That's very sufficient.
So if the next stage is a recommended slate from you, what's the time, how quickly could you do that post the 24th? Does that,
You give us at least 10 days after that,
Right.
we'll be ready the first week in December. Actually,
Well, after
by
the
you,
second week in
Thanksgiving.
December.
huh?
Thanksgiving is in there, I
No,
think.
after
right? Or-
Thanksgiving, so we're looking at,
Thanksgiving is the weekend.
yeah, we're looking at December, the week of December 8th. That gives us 2 weeks, including with Thanksgiving in there. Because remember, what we then have to do is read the applications, select, interview, before we present the slate.
Okay.
And you all present the slate of 10 to 12 to us.
Correct. No, we present the slate of 5 to 6 to you.
Okay.
And that will happen the second week of
The
December?
9th-ish.
Yeah, that's very doable. The week of December
December 9th.
9th. Yeah,
And then we would aim to do a first round of interviews ourselves before we run into Christmas.
Yes,
holiday-
yes,
yes, if you
Yes.
don't want to do, so
Yes.
the week of December 9th you
So
should
we
be
have-
okay.
We have 1 week to do that.
Right. And what happens is again, we schedule that for you. So if we already know ahead of time that your first round of interviews is going to be the week of December 16th, then as we're interviewing candidates, we say that the board's first round of interviews will be held on such and so, such and so. So if you're a candidate, put that in your calendar.
Is that, yeah, just in your kind of professional recommendation, is that wise? Or would you recommend us
Especially
waiting till
in the middle
after
of
the new
winter
year?
break where people are, I know.
Is there winter break here? On the 9th, week of
No,
9th?
It starts the 20.
So the last week of schools is the 16th.
I'd get it done the week of the 9th.
And I think you can do it the week of the 16th, before winter recess.
I think you can decide that
You
one.
guys aren't concerned about this.
You don't need that one tonight.
Well, the concern is setting those dates so that you already know, so that you can plan around your own personal calendars.
Absolutely.
That, because you're gonna need 3 nights or 2 nights. If we give you 5 to 6 candidates, you really need 3 nights. You shouldn't do more than 2 in a night.
Yeah.
So you're gonna need 3 consecutive or very close to being consecutive nights to do those interviews.
So we,
Is that what,
we-
is that what's coming up right now? Is that this is actually a problem for board attendance?
Well, it will be for me.
Okay.
Okay.
So, on our original timeline, we have, the interviews,
In November.
yeah, it was the 5, 6 candidates. That was December 1st to the 15th, is what we had originally. And then the 3 candidates in the beginning of January, to the 15th of January. That's what we had. So,
So you're kind of moving that back just a couple of weeks.
I mean, we could.
Yeah.
If that's what the board want. I mean, we really need
Everybody.
everybody for this. So if it's going to be a problem for board members, that
So what was our
holiday.
original date?
It was December 1st to the 15th.
Okay.
So
First is
Ananda,
too
are
early.
you good up until the 17th?
I,
We can't do the first.
No,
If
I
we're gonna
know.
close on the
Right.
24th, the earliest we could be available would be the week of the 9th.
can't be.
You can be
Now,
there the
sometimes you
17th?
can do it on a Saturday or Sunday, or a Friday or a Saturday.
Yeah.
You have to decide what your protocols are.
If we did the 16th, 17th, and then the Thursday, the prior week, holding those, like the 12th, 16th, 17th?
12th I can't do, it's my mother's birthday, and I promised I'd take her out for.
Okay.
You're a good daughter.
You are a good daughter.
So is everybody good for the 16th?
16 for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
17th?
Let me look what I should be.
We
Yeah.
have to.
Okay, 18th?
That would be pushing for me.
Okay. So what about
11th?
the 11th?
11th I could do, 16th and 17th.
Okay.
That's the day of the city education committee.
Do you have a
Okay.
calendar?
I think we'll
I
have,
said this was gonna be the hardest part.
so it looks like the 11th?
Oh, that's the city education committee.
Yeah,
That's
but
okay.
we can,
That's
we'll
okay.
figure, the 11th, the 16th, and the 17th.
Should
So
we hold
can I-
one more
Can I
night?
ask a question?
Yeah.
Could you do Saturday the 14th?
I probably not, because I'm pretty sure I'm judging my trial.
Okay.
Is that,
So having two on either 16th or 17th not appropriate?
No, it's fine.
No, we were saying, but you need
Should
that
just-
third day.
might
We're
just be
looking
good
for the
to have
third
4
day.
days, just because the
Oh.
candidates are gonna have
Well,
their
no,
own
they're talking about
schedules.
3 days.
I know,
Yeah,
but for us
typically-
to hold, just,
Yeah, you could do 6 in 2 days. It's a real pressure on you because they're about an hour and a half. I mean, you could technically get away with that and do that on the 16th and 17th. But you're still gonna wanna decide then what day you're going to use to
I see you.
reach your decision on who your semifinalists are.
So that means
so we're
that
looking at 3?
We're working, so we're missing work for like 3 or 4 hours each day.
Unless you do it in the evening.
Yeah, we're thinking evenings.
Oh.
So what's the earliest
Alright.
you could meet in the evening?
Yeah, like 5:30.
So if you
5:30.
did 5 to 6:30 is
We have
one.
our standing
5.
meetings at 5 o'clock,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
so we did
5.
5 to 6:30, and then,
7, 8,
Here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that
but
we
then you
have the
need one more if
11th,
you're gonna
the
do 3 in a
16th,
day.
and the 17th, that everyone is available. That has an impact on our standing operations work group on the 16th, I believe. But we
Yes.
can figure that out and move that one around,
No, it's a regular board meeting.
on the 16th.
Yeah, because we had to. push
Christmas.
out.
All right, okay. We can, I think that's a solvable problem. Yeah, that's a solvable problem. Let's hold those dates right now.
Now, just so you understand, we are not present at the interviews. This is, we'll coach you and do everything, get you ready for them. But this is the board.
So there you go.
Okay.
All right.
Do
This
we-
is
Are we
like
looking
half set
good?
Jello, right? Let's hold
I,
it and.
I think we want to find a 4th day.
Just in
Yeah,
case.
maybe the 10th.
Yeah.
10th, 11th, and
Great.
then 16th, 17th.
That's okay?
Sure it is.
10th, 11th, 16th, 17th?
Great.
All right.
Done.
And
Just putting it in calendar.
we okay now?
We'll get,
Yeah.
we're good. Thank you.
Okay. Now, salary parameters, when you're there are different ways of doing it. You could put out a base salary of your past superintendent, but that's not necessary, or you can just say you want to have a nationally competitive salary. That gives maximum flexibility. If you wanted to really, if all of a sudden you had a salary of $300,000, it obviously is going to attract someone. I don't think you're in that ballpark, but my point is, if you're at a place where people don't know much about your system, you might want to put something out there that might attract. I don't think you're going to have that problem. You don't want to just be regionally competitive. You want to be nationally competitive.
Yeah.
And so, are you comfortable with us using nationally competitive?
I would be curious. We currently have one of the top highest for our state of Wisconsin.
Yes.
So I'm curious to what does that mean? Like, I don't know national numbers, I just know state numbers.
Here's what
So-
we would we would like to do some homework. I think I've asked Michael about this. I'd like to see your big five systems, see what the base salary is, to have that information. So we would share that with candidates. But we would also use the word commensurate with past experience. So if you're dealing with someone that's a first year versus someone that's a respected veteran who was superintendent of the year in Iowa, I'm just making that up, but the point is, the board has to have the flexibility in negotiations.
I'm comfortable with that range specifically because if I remember correctly, like the third or the fourth district down the list, there's a gap in there. So there's like the top two, and then there's like the bottom fourth and fifth, and there's a little gap in between. So I'm comfortable with the range, but I know people need to know the numbers exactly.
I think you stay national
if you
competitive,
think-
you'll be fine.
I think so
Nationally
too.
I
competitive
agree.
is where we
Nationally
want to be. We
competitive.
want to be able to
I agree.
get nationally competitive candidates, and we are happy to.
Now, here's another question. I don't know if there's a right way, on the survey, the online survey, that we have given you a boilerplate that staff can share with you. And Deb, I'd like you to weigh in if you want to wait until we do the community engagement, or do you want to put the survey on the website before?
The way-in would be to kind of combine them both. Maybe start the survey and start the publicity about the survey, have the surveys run through the community engagement part. You don't want to give your community more than a couple of weeks, 2.5 weeks, to do the survey. Because, you know, procrastination is a national pastime. And so that will encourage people to put it off and put it off and put it off. So if you begin the publicity about you can conduct this online survey, and it's a part of the community engagement, which will include, then you've got a little bit of a workable window for people.
So Deb, if you're saying we should advertise that the survey is going to be up and running on the 29th, when we do the first day of community engagement, is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying before that. I'm saying the week before that.
Do that.
Yeah, at least a week before, maybe 2 weeks before, a week and a half, half of a week before.
Okay, okay. So
As we-
we'll use October 15th as the kickoff for the survey.
Okay, Savion? and
Yeah, I was
then
gonna say, as we invite partners and start scheduling, we should just include that link in the thing and encourage their members to fill it out and their communities to fill it
Now,
out as well.
one of the things, Michael, we'd like your support on is, we would love that your high school principals would suggest some of their students getting involved in the survey, and we can disaggregate the data, see what the students are saying.
We actually have a student rep on our board, and she can also assist us in navigating that.
Monica would be very
Okay,
good.
and Ananda?
Just a comment on the closing the survey to be like on a November 1st, the day after all your community engagement, so that during the community engagement, people have, because people will always feel like, I didn't get a chance to say everything I said, you can always go to the survey, it's gonna close the end of the day tomorrow, you have one more day to give. That would be
I would probably do it more towards the end of the week of the
whatever that day is.
of the community engagement. Again, because you use your community focus groups to encourage them to go out and have other people who didn't come or who didn't come to the community meeting to do the survey.
That's
And
perfect.
again, giving them that extra 3, 4, 5 days after it.
Yeah.
Why don't we
looks
look
like.
at a November 5th or something like that? From 10:15 to 11:05. So that's sufficient time.
I like that idea.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
Now, here's what that's good. See, now, you need to understand, after we do that community engagement meeting, we are coming back to you, the two of us, and we will do a PowerPoint, and we will give you all that information when we do the profile. So you can see, we can schedule that meeting a little later, but you're going to see us then, and then we're going to weigh in, and then all that information becomes public record. And here's what we'll say. If anyone that reads this or listens to this presentation, if we miss something, then tell the board. So that we didn't get something right, or you say we didn't get it right, That's fine.
So I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
just to kind of bring the dates into it, the next Monday following the 5th of November is the 11th, which is Veterans Day. I'm conscious that we would want to do that with enough time that candidates could react to it in their application if they,
If you have another date, fine. What would you
but
recommend?
like, would the week of the 11th, not a Monday work for?
Tell me what, I'm not sure what you're
For your
referring to.
feedback, so when
Oh,
you share back
When we
with
come back
us,
with you, yes.
what did our community say in forums and in the survey?
Are your meetings on Monday?
They are always, we hold every Monday night, so
Okay.
those are the easiest.
So we don't have.
Well, if you want our report on that day, we could do that.
Well, recognize we need to have about a week
To censor
to
that.
to put the
Yeah.
report
So just-
together.
It might be,
You do it by the
maybe we move the closing
From
date
the-
of the survey up to
If
give
if
you
we're done on
guys
the 30th,
a
that would give us 10
little
days.
more
But-
time.
If you just expanded the
Like the
Sorry.
first.
survey to the 5th,
We have a meeting on
No,
Yeah, we do.
We
Okay.
have it.
We're meeting on
So-
the 4th,
We're okay.
because it's my birthday.
So, can we
The
just,
4th is before.
so did you have an issue for the 11th?
No,
Okay.
sorry, I didn't think we were scheduling on the 11th
Yeah.
because of Veterans Day, but we
Yeah.
are, so I screwed that up.
So the 11th?
For feedback to us on the findings from the sessions and the survey, and then you set the close date whenever you need it to be to make that happen.
I think we'll stick with the, well, it'd make it a little easier for us if we just
The
make the
third.
close date on the,
3rd?
Do the
maybe?
3rd,
The Sunday, the 3rd?
or the 1st or 30th.
can we make it the 1st?
Yeah.
It's fine.
If we make it the
Start it
1st, that'd make
earlier.
it
It's
easier
fine.
for
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
That was,
I think there's benefit to starting earlier too, it'll create some
Yeah.
momentum.
And the other thing is, your communications department will start getting this together.
Okay.
To tell you the truth, you're making great progress.
oh.
As far as giving us direction. The confidentiality piece we've already talked to, and I think there's a consensus that we're confidential until the finalists. Is that a consensus of the board?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yep.
Deb, what have I missed? Have I missed anything that we need?
yeah.
Go ahead.
When are we losing board members?
This is important, ads.
Do you have to leave?
Do you want to go, this affects your advertising budget on, if the window is 30 days, it's $495, example. If you go 60 days, it's going to be,
Twice
a
that.
little bit more. The difference is if you want your budget to be 2,000 or 4,000. That's not a lot of money. But the point is, we think electronically is better bang for buck than just the ad in Ed Week, which costs $1,100 just for one little blurb 1 week.
Gloria, I have a
Just-
weird question.
Okay.
There-
Were you done?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
The weird question is, if we do the survey online and everything, which I'm fine with, is there a way to make sure that the sites are accessible to the disabled, those who are visually impaired? Because some of those surveys are not.
Thank you.
And
then-
language.
And language, yeah.
Yep.
The language piece, for sure. The handicapped accessible, we'll have to figure out and talk about. I'm sure we can. I'm just not sure we've done it before, but we would work with staff in order to see how we could do that.
Great point, Nikki, thank you.
You should stick with your school system protocols and your communication department, following them for
Yeah,
this
they have.
information.
Yeah, they have that.
Anything else?
Just
Yes.
to respond to Kevin's question, I'm comfortable with a 60-day window and
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
4,000 versus
I think it's
2,000.
worth
Is
it
everyone
going
else?
down.
I am too.
And recognize we also advertise on the free sites. So
Okay.
it's in addition to the sites that, because typically Wisconsin will have whatever their Wisconsin Association of administrators. And so we also post on free sites as well. So it will be out there. The intent is to make sure that there's a national presence so that you get applications from all over.
We'll need help from staff and also the board members. Your school board association, how they normally do it, and it should be free. I'm not sure about your superintendent association. We'll have to work with staff for any of the regional things that you normally would do. The other thing that we're not as familiar with, and that is the Hispanic and Latino populations of where those, if you were going to advertise what you might have done, and we would be wanting to have your HR department or somebody tell us what would make sure so we can give an equal opportunity there too.
And we also talk about making sure that if we have the focus groups, that you have the right support systems for that. So it may be that you want to make sure that you have a translator, both at the community forum as well as at the focus group meeting. Again, determining what language you'd like to have the surveys done in. Typically, we do the largest language populations. We found that we don't get a lot of return on the language differentiated populations. However, you want to still have that as an option. And so that would be another consideration. And for the community forum, sometimes I've had districts where they've offered childcare so that people can come and bring their kids and have them drawing or something. Because again, that meeting is only 45 minutes.
Another?
The
Nikki, did you have
sooner
something?
that you give
I was
us
thinking of
whatever
sign language
information needed to be
interpretation, but I'm not
translated,
sure.
I'm assuming you don't do any of the translation, correct?
Correct.
So
But it's really, the ball is in your court.
yeah, so the sooner that you give whatever it is that needs to be translated, we can work with our department, and we can work also to identify, there's 3 main languages that are most spoken, English, Spanish, and Hmong, but there's other 2 languages of like larger and common communities, so I can identify 5 different languages that either the combination of the translation of survey, but also a specific outreach from the interpreters to those communities to make sure that they do that sort of, gathering of folks in particular schools to fill out the surveys and that sort of thing.
Ananda?
Michael has we gave him a Word document last night for a beginning that he'll share with the board, and then we can expedite that as you.
I actually have a question for you, and that would be, does DPI use a sign language interpreter that we could possibly borrow for the community forums, being that we may have members of the deaf community?
Yeah, we have people from the school.
Okay.
The school that we can access,
Alright.
but somebody needs to follow up with me, so.
Okay,
I will
Chris?
do that.
I just have a quick clarification, and that is I didn't get the date that the description of the qualities we're looking for in a superintendent would become public for the candidates. I know you're meeting with us on the 11th.
It would, when we're going to give you a draft leadership profile. Boards sometimes will, they might have certain things that they might want to add, but the board has to have the opportunity for wordsmanship. But usually we would ask you to do it quickly, because then we end up posting that. So after we give that report, then it's in your hands to try to get it finished.
I think it's November 11th, wasn't it
That's
the date?
November 11th. And it's going to be available for all the final vetting, so it'll be fine.
I'm just thinking for candidates to have access to that if the applications are due the 24th.
They'll still have enough time to amend. What they're going to do if they're doing their job is they're going to try to show how they meet your profile. They shouldn't be using generic applications from one applicant to another, so they'll have enough time for that.
All right, anything else? All right, so you will,
I would just have you think about and start considering the next phase. Because we're short of time, we won't do it tonight, but you need really, again, just like we had to navigate when your first interviews are going to be, you really need to start thinking about your second interviews, which are scheduled on the same day that are the day in the district. So when you're thinking about that day, it's not just your second interview, but that whole day, and that you're going to need at least 2 or 3 full days to do that. And right now, it's looking like you're talking about January sometime. So again, starting to look at clearing your calendar for that, and then the rest of that rolls out of that January date. in which you interviewed your second round of candidates and your date for selecting your finalists.
I'm gonna put a card right here.
Yeah.
That's also
So-
when we were thinking about having a board retreat too, so that could
Well, I'm
flow
like,
some
do we
synergy,
want a
yeah.
different kind of level of flexibility around kind of the potential for weather-based interruption at that point? I mean, just being kind of realistic to what
we do have polar
that period of
vortices.
time looked like last year.
Yeah.
Like, it might be an area in which we want to have like 6 or 7 dates and
Because we did lose that week because of cold.
be realistic about maybe losing a little bit of time.
That's a good
I
point,
think if we hold 5, we would have 3 people, if we hold 5 dates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, we could have Barb coordinate on email, so we don't have to do it live, but.
So, okay, go ahead.
One of the things that we might be able to help you with is when we present the candidates, we could probably give you some examples what day in the district might look like, so you can be thinking even, 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time of how
Way
you might
before that.
organize that. So we'll probably add that to some of the material we share with you. I don't think you'd need it before then. Because you're talking about somewhere in January, this is when that would be occurring. So Deb has been very good at organizing some of that stuff, and we can give you some examples.
Yeah, and Ali, great point. I mean, we did,
Yeah.
the winter storms here were horrible last winter, so we did
Or
lose some
even if
days.
just somebody's flying
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Remember, I'm in Illinois, so I'm
Yeah.
your sister
Yeah,
related to that.
exactly.
Remember, I remember Milwaukee. The difference here, when you have winters like this, everybody still goes to school, and you get where we
Exactly.
are,
Right.
if it's a half an inch
Yeah.
of snow, they close it down.
Yeah.
So
No, we are
somewhere,
resilient here.
you guys handle it much better.
Yeah.
Though we did lose almost a week last year
Did you?
because of, it was so cold.
Yeah, like-
It was minus 25 below for 5 days in a row, and we couldn't
Yeah.
send kids to school.
Yeah.
No kidding.
I can never remember having had to have schools closed for that long
That
due to cold.
information from the candidates.
Yeah,
for our
exactly.
event.
Yeah.
Nikki?
Hope for beautiful winter
I
days,
identify
sunny,
with that
clear.
because last January I
Read the
was doing the search in
I did read the
Rochester.
almanac.
So,
Okay, you know.
And I think when I
All right.
spit, it froze before it hit the ground.
did you have something?
And I'm hoping you're better than Rochester, but that
So-
actually, there were some candidates from the south that was not an attractive place for them.
Yeah.
Oh, we always do
Well,
like
thank you
canvas tours in June.
Thank you both so much. I think we provided you enough guidance
You have,
to start the work. And I expect that you'll prepare a timeline for us, an updated timeline based on what you received from us tonight.
if you allow us, we would like to work with Michael
Sure.
and try to, well, with his staff, in trying to make sure we have all of this, we think, in writing,
Yeah.
and then seeing if we've missed anything, and then we'll make an adjustment. Who's helping it? Deidre and Michael, excuse me.
Yeah, and I have the dates down too, so.
Yeah.
All right,
You
so,
guys,
thank you so
we
much.
got a lot done.
I want to thank the board, right, because we are entering the next phase here of this
Yay.
process, and I really appreciate the hard work and the commitment to attending, additional meetings. And we are on timeline, right? We projected this timeline ahead of time, and we are on target, so really appreciate your commitment, your hard work on this, and, yeah, look forward to working with both of you. Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Yep, yep. And so, Kate, did you
I
have?
just was gonna add, Gloria
Yeah.
sent a note out about community organizations. We actually have the old list from last time around that we'll update and resend out. And then if you have anything to add, just send it to Barb, I guess.
And then there's some, in particular for the Latino community, some organizations that we can try to figure out how to consolidate.
Yeah, I saw that in
because
here too. There's kind of
some
similar type.
overlaps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's.
And what you do when you're establishing your focus group participants, it's not necessary to keep them apart. You can take your officials and your child care group and your ministerial
Oh, yeah.
alliance, because what you're asking them to do is to send 1 or 2 representatives from their group. So you want a focus group that doesn't have more than a dozen people in it, because then your conversation gets stifled. But you don't have to just pigeonhole them into one piece. You can
That
take
makes
multiple
sense.
groups. And sometimes it's really helpful for cross pollinating those groups because they don't realize that they have a lot of the same things, same issues, same challenges, same things that they think are improvements. And so when you're thinking about that, don't think of them in silos.
Great. Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.